welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence, and today we're talking about Underwater and Dracula, the new show on Netflix. So we went on opening night. The entire family went to Underwater. It's rated PG-13, and so I don't know if it's entirely appropriate for a 6-year-old, but my 6-year-old saw it. Campbell, what were your thoughts about Underwater?
It was good. It was a good story. I liked how it went. Overall, it was a very good movie.
Do you think it was too scary, Vienna?
Yes.
Too scary? What did it remind you of the Reaper Leviathans from Subnautica?
Yes.
And what else do you have to say about Underwater?
I liked it.
Oh, good. Did you think it was too scary, though?
Yes.
Campbell, do you think it was too scary?
It was good.
Okay, thanks for joining us. So this has mixed reviews. I would compare it to an underwater version or underwater Alien. And I think it's not... I saw somebody say it's a ripoff of Alien. I don't think it's a ripoff of Alien. I think maybe it pays homage to Alien a bit. Kristen Stewart with that shaved head is very Sigourney Weaver-esque in a good way. And I think that, the story, especially with their underwater suits when they have to walk outside of their ship to get to the escape pods, it's definitely akin to, feeling like we're in space and in spacesuits. But give me some underwater creatures. I love it. Nothing is better than the unknown. And under the sea and in space, we absolutely have so much more to explore. We talk about this a lot in our first book, The Science of Monsters. We talk about, the unknown and some of the creepy known creatures that exist underwater, and just think about what is out there in space that we have no idea about yet. And so, I think they are similar in a way. I love Kristen Stewart. I was on that Twilight bandwagon back in the day. Looking back on it now, of course, it's like, oh, wow, I can't believe that, this was so popular. But I was there seeing that movie on opening weekend, and I read the books. I think that she is an amazing actress. She's come so far in her career. Same with Robert Pattinson, too. He's made a lot of great choices, interesting choices, and he's the new Batman, so we'll see how that works out. But I think that they're both great, and, I fully support them. So you heard what the kids thought about Underwater, and we are going to get into some spoilers during this segment. And so if you haven't seen Underwater, you might want to fast forward. Otherwise, Mark, what did you think?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was a cool take, on kind of like a space movie, but it was underwater, so it really felt like a space movie the whole time. You're kind of claustrophobic. You can't... Going out into the water or space is really dangerous, so there's safe spaces and more dangerous spaces, but even the safe spaces in this are crumbling the whole time, so you just get kind of this claustrophobic feeling the whole time, and you're always on edge not knowing what's going to happen next.
Yeah, good point. I was just comparing it to the movie Alien a bit, and Kristen Stewart to Sigourney Weaver, and it feels like you said, it's a place that you can't escape, just like space. You're on this, you're underwater, or it's kind of like you're on a ship or whatever. And it's like you can't get out. And so you have to try to complete this task, and it seems all but impossible. So I thought it was a great setting. It's a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it overall.
And I gotta say, if you're gonna see this movie, you have to see it in the theater, because it's the sound is so loud, it's so powerful. Just the huge screen makes you feel like you're kind of in the movie. So I would strongly suggest this type of movie. Not every kind of movie you have to see it in the theater. Some are more character driven and plot driven. This is more visual effect driven and sound driven. So I'd recommend seeing it in the theater.
Yeah, and they did like you said, even though it's more about that than the characters, we still got a lot of good character background and like character development just through these subtle little things, like seeing a picture of somebody's family or just getting a little glimpse into their past. And so they did a good job of some character development.
One thing I kind of liked is that, most of these movies, they'll probably show for like 15, 20 minutes, like how this oil thing functions and everything's good, and they kind of introduce the character slowly. This one got immediately right into it within about 3 minutes. The room she was in was just caving in, so they didn't really do that, and I kind of liked how they got away from the traditional, way we always see how characters are introduced.
Yeah, truly, it started right away, like you said. It's not they didn't waste any time, and it's not a super long movie too. So maybe they were just like, you know what, let's just get into it, and it's fine, and it worked for me.
Another thing is, you don't really know what's going on for a long time. You think there was an earthquake, and that's what's causing this. And they introduce the creatures very slowly. Like, a lot of it's through sound. It's really dark, obviously, underwater, so you just maybe catch, like, a glimpse here or there. And I think the first real true introduction is when they recover a dead body, and there's, like, a thing inside of it eating it, and it's just like this weird little, I don't even know what they call it, but I think one of the guys says he gets to name it because he found it or something like that.
Yeah, it's cool. It's got an interesting premise. It's a cool vibe. They had a pretty diverse cast. TJ Miller's in it, and I just saw a tweet today saying, why does anybody even cast TJ Miller anymore? Nobody even likes him and wants to see him. I mean, I assume that he got cast before all of his stuff went down.
He's funny in Silicon Valley, like when he was in it. So yeah, I mean, he's a funny actor if you're looking for that comedic thing. I know he did some terrible, allegedly did some terrible things.
Yeah, I think he did. I don't know if it's a legend anymore, but I don't know. I mean, I see that he's cast in something else after this still, but whatever. Spoiler alert, he does die, so at least there's that, right?
But Kelly was mad that he didn't die first. Kelly felt like TJ Miller deserved the first death, and he did not get it, so that was too bad.
Oh well. So I enjoyed it. I think this is like a fun, like you said, a fun movie to see in the movie theater. It has, it makes you feel like you're underwater with them. It's all about that choice, that fight or flight, and what are you going to do in order to survive? What are you going to do to just save your own life? And like, will you give up? Will you sacrifice yourself for someone else? Or like, are you just going to keep fighting?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a good, like, survival movie, like, do whatever it takes to survive, or, do what it takes to help your friend, or your coworker, or whatever. Like, just choices, like, are you going to run away? Are you going to go help people? Are you going to risk your life? Stuff like that.
I think it's interesting, this dynamic of working with people in this close space. I mean, there's a lot more people, of course, that we didn't meet because so many people died in the initial, attack. But imagine, being on an oil rig or being underwater or being out in space, and you just have to live with these people for this extended period of time, and you have to work with them, and it's dangerous and it's dirty, and it's just, I can imagine, we were watching Ad Astra pretty recently, and it's like you have to pass all these psych evals in order to do this work, because you could easily, lose your mind in a situation like this.
Yeah, how long had they been down there? Like, did they ever talk about that? I can't remember.
I think they probably did. I don't remember, but they must, in order to make it make sense for money wise and traveling up and down to the surface, they must stay down there for an extended period of time. So, I can only imagine. I mean, people actually do this. They're in submarines and things, and on oil rigs. So, I don't think I'm cut out for it. Do you think you are?
Not at all. I need to, get outside, move.
You can hardly handle like a day in the house, let alone like 3 months or something.
Yeah, I always feel like I should be doing something, and then if I'm out doing something, I wish I was at home doing nothing. So I don't know, whatever.
Oh, the grass is always greener. Now, you said that the suits in this movie kind of look like Call of Duty. Is that true?
Yeah, I think it was Black Ops. I can't remember. There's so many different ones, but what was it? I think it was Modern Warfare 3. Yeah, they really look like that. Like the suits they wear when they have to go out into the water really look like, I can't remember, one of the characters in that. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Now, the only problem with these suits is that they tend to, all the actors tend to look the same. And it's kind of hard to tell like who's who, because it's not like, well, there's some really defining feature on this suit that we know who's who.
I thought they could have maybe had like different colored like stripes or different colored suits or something, because like half the time in the movie you're like, oh, who is that? Is that Kristen Stewart, or is that TJ Miller, or it's those. I mean, that was kind of distracting, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, wait, which character was that? I mean, we figured it out eventually, but it does take a little bit more. The other thing with this movie and the setting is that the entire movie kind of, it looks the same, because it's not like we're going to a bunch of different settings. It's not like we're seeing things in the desert, and then we're seeing things in London, and then we're seeing things in Antarctica, like a James Bond movie. My God, they switch scenes a lot in those movies, and Mission Impossible. But this is all underwater.
I was literally just going to reference those movies as, like, I like that, where they're, like, in Shanghai, and then they're in Moscow, and then they're in Miami. And, there's so much diversity of the setting. But they made, I can't remember, did they ever have flashbacks or, like, memories back to wherever these people lived?
I feel like we might have seen some imagery, but it definitely wasn't, the variety that we maybe normally get or sometimes get with other kinds of movies.
So yeah, but being in the underwater darkness the whole time, they kept it consistent at least to give you the claustrophobic feeling, and they didn't give you like a reprieve very much of the outside world. So I guess that was, a good choice by the director.
Now, something that I appreciated is that they didn't show the creatures for a long time, and it wasn't like your typical jump scares, and it wasn't like, oh, well, this was really, expected or cheesy or whatever. It actually worked for me, and I appreciated that, because sometimes I feel like some horror movies are just so formulaic. It's like, well, yep, we know something's going to peek out right here or whatever, but it took a long time, and there was a lot of anticipation before we even got to, actually know what was happening. We knew, of course, because of the previews and the trailers that, there were going to be some sea creatures, but we didn't discover until the characters discovered what was going on.
Yeah, and there was one huge master one. I'm not familiar with the Alien movie, but I don't know if that was the same in that movie, but yeah, there was one huge, like, I don't know, crazy looking, I don't even know what you call it, sea creature thing that was like the beast that she had to kill. And there was a cool scene. They finally got to whatever base they were trying to get to, where they could get in these escape pods and go up. But when they got there, the place was crawling with these sleeping, whatever kind of creatures, and their long, like, tentacles are, like, hanging down. So spoiler alert, the three people, I think 3 people who made it there had to, like, walk through this, like, long room of these things where there was, like, hundreds of these things, like, through their things while they were all sleeping. So I thought that was a pretty cool scene. Yeah,
like, visually and tone-wise, it really got me. The noises the creatures make was creepy AF, and I was getting a lot of like Alien and Sigourney Weaver vibes throughout the movie, and not in a bad way. I know some people were saying it's too much like Alien, but I appreciated it. I thought it was a nice nod to those movies.
And there was one scene that was awesome around the same time where I think they woke one of those things up or something, and she was fighting with it, and it actually like ate her, like she was in its stomach or whatever it is, and somehow I can't remember how she like cut her way out or like blasted her way out. So that was awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool. So one of those homages to Sigourney Weaver is that Kristen Stewart was, in her bra and underwear, pretty much. I mean, she was brushing her teeth in the beginning, like getting ready for bed, and then it all went down almost immediately. So, it's not like she's going to be changing outfits as they're trying to survive. Did that bother you? Do you like Kristen Stewart? I mean, are you interested in her as a person?
Yeah, she looked good. She was wearing the brown underwear the whole movie. Obviously, most of the movie they were wearing the big underwater suit things, but yeah, the beginning of the movie and the end, she was wearing the her brown underwear. Yeah, she obviously had hit the gym and she looked good.
She's amazing. I love her. I think that she is just one of the greatest working actresses out there. I know not everyone loves her, but I feel like she's doing good work.
So was the ending of this movie similar to the ending of Alien?
No, it was not. And I'm not going to spoil it for you or the listeners if they haven't seen Alien. I mean, maybe I kind of already did, but no, because Sigourney Weaver's in a bunch of sequels to that.
So can I talk about the end of this movie now?
Absolutely. Spoiler.
So they get to these pods. There's 3 pods and there's 3 people who are going to escape. Kristen Stewart checks out all the pods, and one says it doesn't work. But she tells the other people they all work. So she sets them up in the 2 that work and sets them off so they're going up to the surface. And then she realizes hers isn't going to work, and there's the huge creature out there. So what she does is I think they're drilling for oil or something. She does something with the drills or all the nuclear power or whatever they have down there, and she blows up the station and kills like the huge monster and all the other ones. So that's a pretty tough decision for her, but it was the right one.
She was a hero. And I think, like you were saying, well, there's probably more of these creatures out there, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, exactly. But, they were woken up, I assume, because of this drilling or whatever in this particular area.
So, yeah, another social, political statement in the movie, too, I guess. Don't F with Mother Nature.
There you go. Because you don't know what's going to F back.
You don't know what's going to F back.
Can we put that on a t-shirt? Don't F with Mother Nature. You don't know what's going to F back. I like it. Let's rank this movie on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being you hated it. 10 being you think it's a perfect movie. What should our scale be? What's something memorable from the movie?
TJ Miller's? I don't know.
No, I refuse to rank on the scale of that guy. Oh, let's rank on Kristen Stewart glasses, because I liked her glasses in the opening scene. They were sort of like old school 80s round rim glasses. How many pairs of Kristen Stewart glasses do you give Underwater?
I'll give it a 6. Like, I enjoyed it, but the fact that a lot of the time I didn't know who was kind of distracting, and I was trying to keep track of like who had died and who was still alive a lot, and some people you thought were dead and they came back. And although I like the decision to keep it all underwater, all dark, all whatever, claustrophobic the whole time, I would have liked a little reprieve from that every now and again. But all in all, it was solid. Like, if they were trying to make it like Alien, I think they did a good job of changing the setting, but still keeping it pretty similar. So, but I would definitely recommend seeing this movie in the theater. Like, it was really powerful. Like I said earlier, all the sound, like they had it turned up super loud in there, and it was like surrounding you. So it's pretty cool.
I would also give it a 6. That's exactly what I was going to rank it. Even before you said that, I think it's a great underwater creature movie, and who doesn't love that? I think that's so much fun. So yes, go check it out if we haven't ruined it for you, or if you already saw it, tweet us and tell us what you think. Next up is the 2020 adaptation of Dracula that dropped on the BBC and Netflix. We watched this all within, well, I watched it all within a day. Like, we started it and then we finished it all in a day. And it is adapted by the two showrunners and writers who did Sherlock, which, if you know me, you know that that's one of my favorite shows of all time. Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat. So, and Sue Virtue was a producer, and holy cow. So as we've talked about before on the podcast, Dracula isn't like my favorite thing in the whole world. But when I found out that these two were going to be adapting it for a new TV series, I was intrigued. Now, we're going to get into some spoilers. So before we do that, let me tell you, I recommend it. I can't tell you why I recommend it because it'll give too much away. We're going to get into spoilers next. And so if you haven't seen it, I say go watch it. Give it past like the 20-25 minute mark in the first episode, and it's going to start to blow your mind.
I definitely recommend it as well. Like, I don't know anything about Dracula. Like, Kelly knows way more than me, so I didn't know what I was getting into. And like she said, the first 20 minutes or so are seemingly pretty traditional, like Dracula stuff. But it really takes off from there. But it felt like they had to do that just to kind of set everything. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely recommend this show.
So now we're going to get into spoilers. So like Mark said, the first 20 minutes, it feels like, oh, this is just another Dracula story. And I've seen this a million times and whatever. It's traditional. It's set in the late, 1800s and whatever. Well, things already were amiss and off when it began, but, you don't really realize why. Well, pretty soon, some pretty creepy stuff starts happening. Some things that are really visually scary and stunning and beautiful. And Dracula, like, I just love how he was portrayed and how he was written. He was cheeky, but not in like a Freddy Krueger sense. Like, he was perfect for his time, his era. I loved the nuns interrogating Jonathan Harker, and then it turns out, of course, that here's a huge spoiler, everyone. One of the nuns is a Van Helsing, and the other nun is actually Mina. And here comes the biggest spoiler of all time. Jonathan Harker is actually dead. He's like becoming a vampire. And it was so cool. It kept blowing my mind. This first episode, it took so many turns. I could not keep up, and I was loving it.
The first episode of the three, I think, was my favorite. Dracula's castle feels like this crazy maze thing, and the guy's going all over it. What's the guy's name?
Jonathan Harker.
Yeah, Jonathan Harker's going all around it. Dracula, he knows that there's basically no way out for this guy, and he's just gonna basically feed off him and kill him. But he kind of like tells him that, so it's kind of a weird dynamic. Like, I'm just gonna feed off you. I know you can't get out, and Harker keeps trying, but tons of twists, like wow moments, even in the first episode. The nun, you find out its name is Van Helsing, so like the famous vampire hunter Van Helsing is a woman, which is kind of a twist.
The other thing that I thought was cool is that they're not saying like thousands, hundreds, millions of vampires exist and are functional. They're saying Dracula is different. He's actually figured it out. He keeps trying to make these quote-unquote brides, and he's trying to make perfect vampires, but he keeps failing. So it's like he's trying to procreate, but they're just a little bit off. Like, they get too hungry or they're too savage. They're more like zombies than vampires, and he's the one who's figured it out because he picks and chooses his victims, and I think that's really interesting. And then The other aspect of that is that these vampire people, like some of them feel death and they don't actually die. They're undead. And so they are just trapped in their coffins, or, they feel themselves getting cremated, which comes into play later. And I have not seen that portrayed in Dracula before. I thought that was a really cool take.
I haven't seen that either, and like one of the coolest visual scenes actually is Jonathan Harker when he's talking to these nuns. A fly lands on his eye, like near his eye, and like most people would shoo it away, but he doesn't even feel it, and then it crawls into his eye, and it's like, oh my god! And then you can see it, like the shadow of the fly, like behind his eyeball, and he's like, what? So I thought that was like that really got me for some reason.
No, it totally did. And it's so off and it's so wrong. And you don't understand why until much later. And it's revealed. So, so many great twists. That first episode, it really knocked it out of the park for me.
And they used a lot of the typical vampire, like, legend things. Like, you can't invite them in and stuff like that. They kind of explored, like, why. I can't remember what the other one was. Oh, why are they afraid of, like, the crucifix? Things like that. And there was a cool scene where he was trying to get into the nunnery, but he was like, inches away from this lady, but since he wasn't invited in, he couldn't come in. So they had this really cool, like, conversation with all the nuns. Like, he's like, which one of you is the weakest? And it's going to be one of you. Whoever, I'll spare whoever lets me in, and everyone else is toast. But they didn't do it.
I appreciated that the gore was gory. They didn't shy away from, like, showing some gory deaths. The scares were pretty legit and scary. It was creepy AF. And I didn't know that they would go, these two showrunners, I didn't know they'd go that far with, like, the horror aspect. And I was pleasantly surprised. Now, episode 2 was very solid. I have to mention, though, in episode 1, there was a slight nod to Sherlock Holmes. Agatha Van Helsing says, oh, I have a detective friend in London who, like, helped track her down or whatever. So that was very nice. And I was like, if Benedict Cumberbatch shows up in, like, 1895, I'm going to freak out. But, he didn't. But we'll see what happens. If there's ever a season 2, it didn't seem like there should be. That's a upcoming spoiler that we'll talk about. But what else do you want to say, Mark?
I just want to say one more thing about the first episode. Near the end, there's a very interesting dynamic scene with Jonathan Harker, who is a dead vampire, and his fiance. Because it's always the thing, like, you're a vampire, but I love you and I trust you. So I can't kill you, and he's like, you have to kill me. Like, I'm gonna literally, like, bite your neck and make you a vampire. So he gave her a wooden stake, but she wouldn't do it, and I think he did it to himself.
Mm-hmm. But vampires can't kill themselves.
And yeah, that was another cool part of the legend. Like, Dracula is like, you can't do that, right? So the guy, like, wakes up. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it was very cool. So episode 2 all takes place on this ship, and we are getting other scenes, and it felt very Sherlock to me because it's like a locked room mystery kind of thing, like who's in cabin number 9, and visually, like, the composition of shots, like, it was so well done. I mean, every single episode was so well done, but I really appreciated sort of the Sherlockness of this episode too. It's a bunch of people who think that they're on this boat randomly, but they were actually chosen by Dracula himself for various reasons, and they're getting offed one by one. They had some openly gay characters, which was awesome, which I'm always about representation. They also had a pretty diverse cast. They were able to cast people from different backgrounds, from different countries, all on this ship together. And so it had a lot of interesting dynamics, and then it freaking blew my mind the most my mind has ever been blown at the very end, but let's save that.
Yeah, I guess we won't get into that spoiler, although it'll be hard to talk about
No, we will talk about it next, but we'll get into that after you tell me what you think of the second episode.
Yeah, like you said, it was very Sherlocky, if that's a word. It was very like not kind of like a whodunit mystery, even though we know who was doing it, but everybody else was trying to figure it out. Yeah, he was kind of strategically killing these people one by one. He would take on their characteristics. Like, I think that's like he killed a German deckhand guy, and then he could speak German, but he like developed the guy's stutter. So I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah, and then it was like this. I think once they found out what Dracula was and like that he was doing it, it was like this big team effort against him to try to figure out how we can like trap this guy and trick him and all that. So I thought that was pretty cool, and Van Helsing was leading that. So
it was great, and like the part of the twist was, the episode started with Agatha and Dracula playing chess, and it's like, where the heck are they? What's going on? And I'm like, Mark, are you sure you started at the beginning of the episode? And we had like double checked because it did not seem right. But of course, this is sort of like in the Mind Palace, to do a Sherlock reference, and he's controlling her dreams, and she's actually, being fed off of, and she's the person in room number 9. They think that she must be a vampire or a witch or something, or, a killer at least, and they're going to burn her at the stake or, kill her somehow. And she does this really cool trick to get Dracula outed by, she bites her own lip in order to make it bleed because he can't control himself around fresh blood. And so I thought that was pretty clever and a nice touch. She gets everyone to follow her. She says, I'm now the captain of this ship, and ends up deciding to sacrifice herself for the greater good and so the ship will never reach London.
Yeah, she blows up the ship right outside of England, and can't remember what the captain had something to do with that, right?
Well, the captain said, I'll go down with the ship too. But she's like,
distracted him.
Yeah, and she distracted Dracula so that he could go blow it up. And that's Anderson from Sherlock, so that was lovely. Here comes the mind-blowing plot twist.
Really quick, who was the actor who played Dracula? Because I thought he did an outstanding job.
I don't have his name handy. Maybe you can look it up for our listeners, but he was the perfect casting choice. He's sort of traditionally handsome, but he's not so handsome that it's like unbelievable. And his, I know it's dialogue and direction and everything, but also his acting and just how he delivers these one-off lines and these like cheeky things. It's not so obnoxious that I can't handle it. I really thought that he was good and endearing.
I'm looking him up.
If Dracula can be considered endearing, I don't know, but I really liked him. His name should be under his photo.
I think his name is Claes Bang. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's him. Yeah, and so very cool. And then Dolly Mills, is Agatha, and she is just incredible. She's the two of them together are quite the pair.
He's a Danish actor and musician.
Yes. I looked him up when I heard that this show was going to be made, and, who their Dracula was. So he gets into his last coffin of dirt, his Transylvanian earth to sleep, and it sinks to the bottom of the sea. Well, we see him get out, and he walks to the shore, and here's the mind-blowing moment. There's helicopters whirring, and all of a sudden there's police cars, and it looks as if Agatha is there standing with all these police officers, saying, what took you so long? And it cuts then we start the next episode. So 123 years he slept in the ocean, and now he's emerging, and it's modern day London. That twist blew my mind. I thought, how cool is this? The only problem, and I don't know if it's because of the time of day or we just been watching so much, I feel like the third episode lost some momentum for me. I really loved how they brought all of the traditional characters in and how they sort of changed them up, the diversity of the cast, and everything that they did with with that. But I think it didn't live up to the first 2 episodes.
I thought it was really cool when like Dracula got introduced to all these new technologies, like modern day stuff. He was in this house, it was like the nicest house in the world. And he's like, this box on the wall, and this thing that cleans this, like any king I've known, the richest kings in the world, and this would be the lap of luxury for them. So I thought that was pretty cool.
It was so funny. And yeah, just seeing him and his learning curve with technology. And he's saying like, oh, I've lived for, hundreds of years, but you've advanced the most in these past 123, which is probably true. Of course it's true. But him figuring out technology and like some silly things like the Wi-Fi password and Skyping or whatever with people. I mean, I appreciated it.
Yeah, he figured out the Wi-Fi password was Dracula. So yeah, I think he had an iPad, so he was able to contact his attorney, he's had since 1896, to come help him because he's being held like against his will. And so he gets released out into the world in London. So then is he on dating apps? Yeah, he goes on dating apps, and that's how he feeds off people. So it's
pretty smart.
Pretty easy for Dracula in the 2000s. So
yeah, I mean, it's not difficult. And then Lucy's poor fate. I mean, we know her fate from the novel and all the adaptations, but she, in this one, it's that interesting foreshadowing that if you get cremated, you're going to feel it, and you're going to become undead, and you're going to feel getting burned alive. And she comes back, and we see, through her own eyes eventually and other people's eyes, that she is this burned corpse. And it's just, it's so gross and so well done. Some of the speculation of why Dracula can't handle the crosses is because, first of all, because God exists, or other people's belief in God or its goodness. The mirror thing isn't true. They say that he sees a more true reflection, and when he looks in the mirror, he's like really ugly. And then, of course, the sunlight thing, he's missing the sun so much, and he's avoiding it. But we discover through it's Zoe now, with a great niece of Agatha, that it's all been in his mind. He's started to believe some of these things, and it's not really accurate.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. Like when the sun finally hit him, and he's like, ah, and you think he's burning, but then he stops and he's fine. I thought one cool thing was he bit. I can't remember her name. Not Lucy. Zoe, who has cancer, and he like spits out the blood immediately because he can sense that she has cancer or something. So it doesn't work for him.
Yes, that reminds me of True Blood. If they drink blood from a dead body, that makes them sick or could die too. So, it's like tainted somehow, the blood. And yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
I think so too. So yeah, the last episode, she's dying. She has very little time left, so she's basically using whatever time she has left to help Jonathan's, I don't know, great grandson or something, conquer Dracula.
No, I don't think he had any. No, he wasn't related to Jonathan at all. He's just the love interest. He was working for that foundation because he was a doctor, Dr. Seward.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought he was related. I apologize.
No, that's okay. It's an easy mistake to make because on his phone, when he kept getting the phone calls, it said Jonathan Harker was calling. It's like, wait, what's going on? But it was the Jonathan Harker Foundation.
Okay, I'm sorry. Changes everything.
Like I said, I enjoyed the show overall. Spoiler alert. Both leads die in the last scene of this show. And so how could there be another season? I mean, stranger things have happened, of course. Big Little Lies was only supposed to be one season. It was based on that one book, and then they ended up making a whole other series. So who knows?
Can you remind me again how it ended, how they died? I can't remember.
She just died. I mean, she was like moments away from dying, and then he drank her blood, and then he died because she had cancer and it was poison to him.
Because he wanted to die, right? Because the one thing he feared was death. That's what it was.
Yeah. And yeah. So it was good. I love Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss. I think that, or Mark Gatiss, I too have to mention that he played an interesting version of Renfield in this. He was a lawyer and he was still eating flies, and he was good and creepy, and what a great actor he is. I don't love everything that how they wrapped up Sherlock, but my goodness, these guys are talented, and I have to give them this. This is an adaptation I wasn't expecting. It blew my mind so many times in so many ways, and I really, really enjoyed it.
I agree 100%. All the twists, bringing it from the 1800s to the current day was a huge twist. I enjoyed the first episode so much, and I don't know, I thought they'd kind of keep it in that same realm, and maybe I kind of wish they would have a little bit because I enjoyed it so much. But there were 3 very distinctly different episodes. They all, they were all very good. But yeah, I like the first one the best, the second one the second best, and the last one the least. But they were all still very good, and I would definitely recommend watching this. Well, obviously, if you're listening to this, you already watch it, hopefully.
So let's rank this entire show. I agree with you in the rankings of the episodes, like in the order that I like them. But let's rank this as a whole, as a series. 0 being you hated it, 10 being you think it's a perfect TV show. Our scale, should it be flies going into the eyeball?
That's what I was going to say, yep.
We are on the same page. So how many flies going into the eyeball do you give Dracula, the series, 2020?
I'm going to give it 8 flies behind the eyeball. Visually very good acting. I like the kind of mixing in a little bit of comedy and like cheekiness with Dracula, and I liked the Van Helsing character, how she was a nun, but she really didn't believe in God, and she basically said she was just doing it as a job and like for somewhere to
get a roof over her head and a free meal.
Yeah, it was like she was in a bad marriage or something like that, she said. But yeah, she was a good character, a lot of twists. I like Dracula's castle in the first one a lot. I like when he came to the nunnery and he was like a werewolf. That was a cool scene too, when he transformed from a werewolf back into Dracula. They're like, we know who you are, just come out. So he's like, he did this like weird transformation thing.
Oh, it was so cool. And then I'm like, oh my God, Jonathan Harker's still alive, but actually he was wearing his face like Silence of the Lamb style. Like that was a good twist too.
Yeah, they made a circle of bread, like holy bread, so he couldn't enter. But Dracula, or like the beginning of Mission Impossible when Tom Cruise rips his face off. Yeah, he got invited in because they thought he was, or his fiance thought he was Jonathan. So no, the second episode was cool with the ship and all the different characters. There's like this, he got this like fog to follow the ship the whole time, so he wouldn't have to see the sun, and just the different interactions he had with all the different passengers and crew. Huge twist, bringing it forward into the current time. I don't know, I just enjoyed the whole thing, and I've never really known the story of Dracula, so this was a good way to tell it in entertaining way, I thought.
You won't be able to ever go back, I don't think, to other versions, Mark, because everything else will be like dreary and dark and not as exciting for you. I'm going to rank this on a scale of 0 to 10. I'm giving it a 9. 9 flies in the eyeball because I thought it was so solid. It blew my mind so many times. I don't think it's perfect, so I'm not giving it that 10, but I enjoyed it so much. I will probably go back and rewatch this show. And yeah, thank you for the diversity in the female characters and the great and fun and interesting dialogue, like the composition of shots. It was a beautiful show to watch.
I agree. Highly recommend seeing it. Pretty much everybody has Netflix. You're always looking for something. You should definitely watch this.
So, until next time, we'll see you in the horror section.
Bye.